Now for the answer to the question posed at the end of the last video segment. At highway speeds, 12 to 15 seconds is about 1/4 of a mile ahead. Multi-lane and two-lane roadways. Highway driving may not seem as complex as city driving, but the high speeds raise the safety stakes considerably. In addition to the basic necessities of scanning and keeping a cushion of safety, there are additional defensive driving skills and techniques you can use to reduce your chances of a highway collision. One of the most hazardous highway situations occurs when drivers attempt to merge onto a highway. When on an entrance ramp without a control light, maintain a safe following distance behind any vehicle ahead. This will prevent you from startling the other driver, who may panic upon seeing an ambulance behind and may stop at the entrance ramp. Give you room to maneuver should the driver in front slow or stop. Give you time to scan across traffic lanes. And give you enough room to accelerate as you merge with the faster moving traffic. Once the vehicle in front merges, use your mirrors, lean in your seat, and check across lanes for vehicles you might not be able to spot in your mirrors. Once on the highway, establishing and maintaining a cushion of safety will help you provide a smooth and comfortable ride for your patient and crew. As discussed earlier, when driving over 40 miles per hour, try to maintain a 5-second following distance and adjust your speed and lane position to maintain your cushion of safety. You should be scanning 12 to 15 seconds down the road, which is approximately 1/4 of a mile. Your long-distance scan will allow you to spot signs, overpasses, and lighted areas that indicate upcoming interchanges. As you approach an interchange, check your mirrors and blind spots for drivers approaching from behind who might cut in front of you to exit or to avoid merging traffic. Also, use your professional judgment based on the traffic flow to determine which lane to use as you pass the entry and exit areas. You will have the opportunity to explore this situation in one of the classroom analyses. If you decide to change lanes, either to pass because of an upcoming interchange, or in this case because of an upcoming hazard on the right, begin by checking your mirror and leaning in your seat to broaden your sight angle. If all is clear, signal and check again. If still clear, move into the center lane. Once in the center lane, cover your brake to re-establish your 5-second following distance. If you are passing another vehicle, be sure you can travel at least 5 miles an hour faster than the vehicle without exceeding the speed limit. As you pass, move to the left side of your lane to increase your cushion on the right. Glance at the left front wheel of the vehicle being passed. If the gap narrows between the tire and the line markings, tap your horn to alert the other driver of your position. As you complete your pass, lean in your seat and use your mirrors to check the right side blind spot. Remember that your right mirror may make a vehicle seem farther away than it actually is. If clear, signal and move smoothly back into the right lane and cancel your signal. When you are driving in the middle lane on the highway, you must continually scan your mirrors to watch for any potential pinch point situations. That is, when vehicles on both sides of you pass you at the same time and try to pull into your lane. Be ready. Pinch point situations are fairly common. Cover your brake and back off. As in the city, try to stay out of other drivers' blind spots. If you can't see the other driver's inside rear view mirror through the rear window, that is a clue that you may be in that driver's blind spot. He may not realize your position and could suddenly move into your lane, giving you little time to avoid a collision. Adjust your speed to move out of the blind spot to a position where you can see the rear view mirror through the rear window. If you will be exiting, you should know ahead of time the exact location of your exit. This will help you avoid having to make a last-minute lane change and will help ensure a safe, comfortable ride for those in the patient area. As you approach your exit, signal well in advance. Check both mirrors to spot drivers behind you who may try to cut in front to exit. Slow and move into your exit lane as soon as it is clear. And keep your speed down on the exit ramp. These speed limits are posted for cars, not for a larger and higher vehicle such as an ambulance. Two-lane roadways. Two-lane roadways have their own special hazards, such as poor road shoulders with large drop-offs, trees, telephone poles, and oncoming traffic, all of which make it difficult to find an escape lane in case the unexpected happens. Sometimes you can't even move within your lane. In addition, the heavy vegetation combines with sharp curves and crests of hills to obstruct your view of the road ahead. In conditions like these, where you can't scan far down the road, cover the brake and be ready to slow quickly should a hazard appear with little warning. Your only option may be to slow or stop within your lane, since you may not have an adequate escape lane. Here, your scanning picks up the Hidden Drives sign and the traffic cone near the curve. Cover your brake to further reduce your speed. As you round the curve and spot the road maintenance ahead, reduce your speed still further, braking if necessary. Scan past the trouble area and proceed slowly, only when you are sure it is clear. When you do spot potential hazards ahead, cover the brake to reduce your speed. Now you are ready for this sharp curve, and you are able to negotiate it smoothly without sudden braking, much appreciated by your co-workers and the patient in the back. On rural roads, not only are your visibility and maneuverability restricted, but you often must share the narrow roads with other motorists, bicyclists, and pedestrians. Scanning as far ahead as possible allows you to spot others on the roadway. But don't let your attention become fixated on the obvious hazards and lose track of changing conditions, such as the partially obstructed pedestrian crossing warning sign and the pedestrian suddenly moving onto the right side of the road. Gravel roads require special attention. The loose road surface, combined with the ruts and washboard surface, substantially reduces traction and increases braking distance. Also, gravel roads are often very narrow, with no shoulders or escape routes. These factors, combined with a restricted view of the road ahead, in this case caused by the hill and heavy vegetation, require that you reduce your speed. As soon as you spot the fuel delivery truck, cover your brake and proceed only when you are sure the road ahead is clear. Take a moment to think about the following question. It will be answered before the start of the next video segment. All of the following are true about hydroplaning except A. It can happen only to light vehicles. B. It can happen whenever the roads are wet. C. It can happen at low speeds, as low as 30 miles per hour. D. It can adversely affect steering and braking. Stop video. Now for the answer to the question posed at the end of the last video segment. Hydroplaning can happen to any vehicle, not just lighter vehicles. Whenever the road is wet and at speeds as low as 30 miles per hour, hydroplaning can occur, adversely affecting your ability to maintain control over your ambulance. Special considerations. Backing. Traffic safety experts agree that all drivers should avoid backing whenever possible. It's definitely sound advice. If you can keep your ambulance out of reverse gear, you will significantly reduce your chances of a collision and potentially save a lot of downtime. However, there are times when you must back, such as into this garage. Whenever you must back, first scan the area where you will be backing to be sure there are no obstructions in your path, including behind or alongside your vehicle. Don't forget to check for overhead obstructions. Open your window so you will be able to hear any warning sounds. Don't rely on your vehicle's audible warning system to clear the area. You must be 100% sure that your path is clear. If not, stop and check it out before proceeding. When all is clear, proceed slowly. You will also be backing when offloading patients at an emergency room. Become familiar with any potentially hazardous backing areas at the hospitals and care facilities you visit most often. Note any light poles, low overhangs, high curbs, dumpsters, etc. If you are on a transport run to an unfamiliar facility, make every effort to check ahead for any unique circumstances involved in picking up or dropping off patients at that facility. As you back into an emergency department unloading area, scan for potential problems. Be on the lookout for family members or friends of patients who are probably only concentrating on the condition of their loved one and may not even think about the position of your vehicle. Also keep an eye out for hospital personnel entering and exiting the facility, especially during shift changes. You must be 100% sure that your path is clear, and as always, back slowly. If you have a choice, always try to back from the operator's side. This position will give you a better view of the area before and while backing. At times, you will have to back your ambulance to pick up a patient. Normally, it is safer to back into a less traveled road or a driveway so you do not have to back out into a more heavily traveled road when you leave. That way, you will have a better view of traffic while backing. If you have any doubt about the terrain of the intended backing area, such as the possibility of soft dirt, mud, sand, or other obstacles, get out and check it before backing. Your crew will probably disperse immediately to care for the patient, so you may not have help backing. In any case, backing safely is your responsibility. If there is a crew member available, use that person as a spotter. But keep in mind that even with a spotter, things can go wrong, and a safe back is your responsibility. Agree with your spotter ahead of time on hand signals, especially the signal for stop. Place the spotter in a position where he or she can see the areas that you can't, but never place the person within your intended path of travel. If you lose sight of the spotter at any time, stop immediately. Backing should always be done slowly and with extreme caution. Whenever possible, use a qualified helper. At a collision site, there may be other emergency personnel, such as a traffic officer, who can help you back safely. Driving at night. In addition to many of the same hazards you deal with during daylight hours, you have a whole other set of hazards to contend with at night. Your first defense against trouble is to use your high beams when it is safe and legal to do so. You've probably heard the phrase advising you not to overdrive your headlights. This means you should be able to stop in the distance illuminated by your headlights. Whether driving with high or low beams, remember that your headlights can only shine straight ahead. On roads with hills and curves, you should always slow beforehand so you are not surprised by objects, other vehicles, animals, or pedestrians in the roadway. If oncoming drivers do not dim their headlights, shift your eyes to the right edge of the lane to avoid looking directly into the headlights. You may be tempted to use your high beams to retaliate. Don't do it. Your high beams may momentarily blind the other driver or the driver in front of you. As a member of the healthcare team, you are well aware of another nighttime hazard: impaired drivers. Be on the lookout for erratic drivers, those who are out of sync with other traffic, driving too fast or too slow for conditions, weaving back and forth within their lane, or driving without their headlights on, etc. Stay well away from any drivers you suspect may be impaired, and use your radio to alert the police about them. Impaired drivers are a danger to everyone on the road, including themselves. Hydroplaning. Earlier, we discussed the physical characteristics of an ambulance, which is heavier, higher, and wider than your personal vehicle. Don't be fooled by thinking that these solid characteristics will prevent you from hydroplaning. It can and does happen to heavier vehicles. While it is difficult to say exactly when hydroplaning will occur, if you see reflections on the road, it is a good clue that it may be possible, even at relatively low speeds of 30 miles per hour. Water builds up in front of and under your tires. With very little contact between the tires and the pavement, braking and steering become unpredictable. In wet road conditions, you should reduce your speed to lessen the likelihood of hydroplaning. If you feel your ambulance begin to hydroplane, take your foot off the accelerator. Avoid sudden braking and steering. Take a moment to think about the following question. It will be answered before the start of the next video segment. While driving in a true emergency with lights and siren, you can disregard traffic control laws in an effort to reach your destination as fast as possible and not be held responsible in the event of a collision. True? False? Stop video. Now for the answer to the question posed at the end of the last video segment. False. Driving under lights and siren while in a true emergency does not lessen your driving responsibility. You can still be held responsible in the event of a collision. Always drive with due regard for the safety of others, including your passengers. Emergency driving. In this section, we will cover some techniques regarding driving with lights and sirens. You will also hear an ambulance operator, Mike Montecalvo, relate a situation that happened to him. As you will see, Mike was and still is a dedicated health professional. Mike unselfishly agreed to relate his story to others to help them avoid a similar situation.
I had just finished a 24-hour shift with the fire department that I was employed with, and started another 24-hour shift with an ambulance company that I was moonlighting with. That morning our shift started out with a woman in labor, and we had missed delivering her by about 5 minutes. We got her into the emergency room, and that's where she delivered. We never even got her upstairs to OB. The next run of the morning, about an hour or so later, was a little boy using the trampoline using the couch, as a trampoline, and went sailing into the TV set. And I think he scared Mom more than he was hurt. But we took care of that, and he was fine. The rest of the day was pretty much uneventful. Just the normal ambulance company type work that you do. That evening we had a known cardiac patient that we had responded to, and when we arrived at his address, we couldn't find him. We were contemplating calling the police department to break in, not knowing if he had gone into a full arrest, talking to neighbors, maybe finding a hidden key somewhere. Nothing. When dispatch called us and told us that there was a new address and it was clean across the other side of the city. So we went back en route, and my partner was very upset, thinking that the problem was a problem with dispatch. So we arrived, we were able to get to the gentleman in time, got him into the hospital, pretty much uneventful, and got back into quarters, where my partner and the dispatcher started a little heated debate about the run, and whose responsibility it was for a correct address and those kinds of things. We weren't back in quarters too long when the emergency phone rang and the dispatcher answered it by speakerphone, and we could hear the 911 operator from a neighboring community say that they needed an ambulance to respond to a particular intersection for an auto accident involving 3 children and a baby and bodies lying all over the road. Now I want you to think, when you get a call, something like that, something that for whatever reason just seems to kind of catch you right in here, what that's going to do to you, what your feelings are when you hear something like that. We were the closest unit within the area. Our 2 sister units in that particular area were already on runs. So we were it. We were 17 miles away from the accident scene, so off we went. And normally when we get an alarm, when I say we, I'm talking about all of us, whether you're in a fire department, whether you're hospital-based, depending on how you do your work, whether you're a firefighter, EMT, paramedic, police officer, whatever. If you have to get to the vehicle, how do we get there? We run. Okay. Well, that's exactly what my partner and I did. Well, on the way to the unit, he was still pretty upset because of his discussions with the dispatcher, and I asked him, I said, do you want me to drive? He said, yes. Now, I never usually drove because I would much rather have been in the back. But I knew where we were going, knew what needed to be done and which route we needed to take, so I jumped behind the wheel. 2 minutes into our response, dispatch calls us and says we now have a motorcyclist involved in this accident. Here we have 2 paramedics responding to what we believe to be a major accident, 17 miles away from quarters, knowing that the fire department in that jurisdiction is not going to be able to help because they were already on an alarm, knowing that we've got 4 possibly critical pediatric patients, and knowing that they don't meet the criteria for the golden hour because of being a ped. And now we've got a motorcyclist involved. We're thinking about what kind of trauma we're going to have to deal with, wondering what kind of help we may have on the scene, if any, wanting to, or wondering whether or not we're going to have the helicopter being able to come from the trauma hospital about 30 miles away. So all these things are going through our mind. Well, we had cleared an intersection on the green light, and my foot had slipped off the air horn button on the floor of the truck. We got through the intersection, looked down, put my foot back on the button, and as I brought my line of sight to go back out through the windshield, I caught sight of the speedometer. We were right at 60 miles an hour. That scared the living daylights out of me because I didn't think we were traveling that fast. Fight or flight? Most definitely. We all experienced the fight or flight syndrome, and I most certainly did on this run. I immediately backed off the accelerator, turned my attention back to the intersection that was approaching a half a mile ahead, and forgot about the accelerator, or forgot about the speed limit after that. I turned my attention to the traffic and paid attention to what was going on there. For the entire half mile of travel, not one thing moved through this intersection. And as a matter of fact, all the way during our response up to this point, we were not challenged on the roadway at all. And we've all experienced during a response someone pulling out in front of us, racing us down the street, refusing to yield the right-of-way. None of that happened on this response. And nothing moved in this intersection for the entire time that we were approaching it. Gave you a false sense of security that this intersection was secure. People knew that you were coming and that it was clear for you. We entered the intersection. 3/4 of the way through the intersection, we all of a sudden had a subcompact car in front of us. Now, who do you think is going to lose between a 12,000-pound ambulance and a subcompact car? Well, I'll give you a clue. It wasn't the ambulance. We had impacted this car right behind the driver's doorpost and sent it flying off in one direction. We had rolled up over the rear bumper of the car and had turned over.
Whether driving on a non-emergency transport situation or responding to a call under authorized lights and sirens, an ambulance operator must follow safe driving practices. However, on emergency runs, a very significant hazard is added to the safe driving equation, the adrenaline and emotional rush that the operator experiences. Let's watch a demonstration that objectively shows the effect on an experienced ambulance operator when a call comes in. He will be monitored by a pulse meter to detect any change in his pulse rate. Remember that this person is not an actor. This is occurring exactly as you see it.
Wait, forget.
Thank God.
Attention Chief 2, Engine 2, Min 1, response, building 120.
As you can see, his pulse rate increases by almost 60%, a physical indication of the emotional reaction to the siren. This adrenaline and emotional rush can be so significant that, in their haste to get to the emergency site, operators will fail to drive in a responsible manner with due regard for the safety of all persons. The ambulance operator must keep in mind that he or she is not protected legally from the consequences of failing to maintain control or for reckless disregard for the safety of others. It is up to you as a professional to keep the stress and emotions of the situation under control and your attention focused on driving safely. Driving in a true emergency with lights and sirens does not necessarily mean that you should drive faster than normal to benefit the patient. In fact, depending on the type of care and condition of the patient, driving at slower speeds with gradual acceleration and smooth braking often result in improved pre-hospital care for the patient. Think of your lights and siren as they were intended, as signaling devices to make you more visible, not as an excuse to drive fast. If you are a volunteer or an on-call operator, you may be at home or work when you receive a call. Don't let your eagerness to get to the ambulance transfer into unsafe driving practices. While it may be legal for you to use a signal or courtesy light on your personal vehicle, you should never assume that other drivers see it and will respond in a predictable way. In fact, others may not know what the courtesy light is and may be confused by it. It is much safer to drive as if you don't have the light. The same safe driving techniques, with some modifications, apply to both your personal vehicle and your emergency vehicle. You will have the opportunity to discuss these further in the classroom exercises. Before leaving your home base, plan your route to the emergency site so, once underway, you can concentrate on your driving. You should know which streets are one-way, which streets are most congested, where school zones are, and how to avoid railroad crossings. Plan the safest and most efficient route to the emergency scene. While en route, let the crew focus on providing care for the patient while you operate the ambulance. Try to minimize your communication with the crew and the dispatcher to enable you to focus your attention on the changing traffic situations. Don't allow anything to interfere with your driving. Scan carefully and constantly for potential hazards ahead. Cover the brake when you see the van waiting to pull out on the right. The driver seems to be waiting, and the van ahead waiting to turn left. The driver doesn't want to pull to the right in case you pass on the right, and he must wait for a break in traffic to make his left. Keep your speed low while the situation resolves. You're the professional. You have to be ready. Now let's turn our attention to the other driver and how that person might react to lights and siren. We're going to show you some setup situations. The first is a simulated intersection created with cones at the edge of a runway. The ambulance will approach from the car driver's right side at 30 miles per